Thank you, Father, for this time, this opportunity to learn more about your word, about your plan, and about ourselves. We ask that you'll open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word says. And we thank you. In the name of Yahushua, amen.
Amen.
All right, so looking at a small piece of this Torah portion, what's happened? The Torah portion begins shortly after Jacob has left Laban, okay? And Laban's caught up to him, and they're all freaked out, wigged out, and stressed out. Rachel has stolen the idols. She's sitting on the idols, and so they're never found, okay? But now the pashat part of this, the topical part of this, is that Jacob is gripped by fear because he has to meet with Esau. And Esau, the last thing that Esau said before Jacob left was, "I'm going to kill you." And he wasn't going to kill him while Isaac and Rebekah were alive, but as soon as the parents died, his plan was to kill him. So
They're still alive at this point.
yeah, so, but it's like Michael Corleone says, you know, I don't want him touched until my mother's dead. So, and that's what the deal was. So here we are. Jacob is now formulating plans on how to either fight Esau, escape from Esau, or appease Esau. Okay? He's formulating plans on how to either fight Esau, escape from Esau, or make Esau happy. Now, we look at this more in the sod point of view, but how many times are we trying to appease Esau, run away from Esau, or fight Esau? Okay? Because, you know, we are all there. All right, so what is the remes and deresh of this? What are the two areas where we look a little deeper to find something that's going to lead us to something else in the Torah? So this becomes the inauguration of the prince. This is the inauguration of the Nasi that we would find in Ezekiel. Okay? We won't read that in English, and if we just simply go with the topical words in Hebrew, we're going to kind of miss that as well. We have to look a little bit deeper to see what's going on. So we're going to find a hidden prophetic reference to the prince of Ezekiel. That'll be in verses 24 through 28 is where we're going to really focus in on. These verses deal with Jacob wrestling with whatever it is that he wrestled with. You know, Scripture says it was a man. In fact, in the Hebrew it says it was Ish. We're also told it was a Malachim, an angel or a messenger. In the end, we're said, oh, well, he wrestled with Elohim, because he says, you've wrestled with Elohim. So, which one is it? So, let's take a look. Verse 24. It says, Jacob was left alone. So, you got a pen, mark out through the word alone, because there's no word for in Hebrew for the word alone. It simply says, Jacob was left. He was all that's left. Okay? The word for left is yathar, that is used to say left alone. But yathar also means to be a remnant, and it also means what remains. Okay? The very nitty-gritty. After everything has been stripped away, this is what's going to be left. All right? And then we come to the phrase, until the breaking of day. Now, there's no word for day in here. But the word for breaking is Allah. Okay? Now, here's where we start to get a hint towards Ezekiel. Allah is a word that means to ascend, to be brought up, to be lifted up, to be exalted, which is another word, or another name that can be used for this is the word Nasi, that means prince. And Nasi is the word that's used in Ezekiel to describe the prince. So we have Jacob will remain and will eventually be exalted. He'll be lifted up. Okay, something in Jacob will change. Now, getting a little ahead of ourselves, remember, Yaakov means to supplant something. So Yaakov will have supplanted himself, will have ended up in slavery. Again, getting ahead of ourselves, we go back and forth between Jacob and Israel. But Jacob is also called by Elohim, see Jacob my servant, or my servant Jacob. Okay, Abed. Note the slave Jacob. Okay? And it's not saying, oh, I love Jacob so much. He's saying, look, this is what happens. He's a slave. Pay attention, he's a slave. Okay? All right, so the word that's used for the breaking of day really, is shakar. That means the first light of a new day. Okay? The first light of a new day. Also a reference towards Ezekiel, because Ezekiel, unlike the balance of the Tanakh, deals with the day of Yahuwah. It deals with after the gate is closed and what happens moving into the world to come in the millennium and post-millennium. Okay? So from these words we can consider that Jacob will be a remnant and will be lifted up on the first light of a new day. What has been supplanted will be restored to truth. And again, the word used in Ezekiel is nasi, that means to be lifted up. So what has been supplanted will be replaced, and what remains will be lifted up and become the prince. Okay? What is the whole purpose of the Torah, the prophets, and Brit Hadashah? To restore the two houses of Israel back into one house of Israel so that we can have a prince. Yahusha came to pay the 30 shekels of silver to reevaluate Israel, and then the blood to bring them back into a covenant relationship. Only in that can the people of the land be ministered to and receive deliverance in the world to come as well. So the whole scheme of things brings everything together so that there is a high priest in the order of Melchizedek, a priesthood in the order of Melchizedek that can minister to the people of the land, which was the original game plan all along. You had creation, the creation of the Adam, of humankind, the creation of Adam in order to be the Kohen Hagadol to minister to the people of the land. This fell apart. Now Jacob is inaugurated. Israel will move forward, or is to move forward, but they're going to end up in slavery for 400 and some change years until Elohim gives them the commission. If you will listen to my voice and guard my covenant, then you will be my treasured people, and you will be a nation of Kohanim. Okay? All right. So this process will, however, be a struggle as indicated by the word abach, that means to wrestle or to grapple, means to get dirty, wrestling and grappling. Verse 25, we can consider that this struggle will seriously involve Jacob's, the children of Israel's walk to the point of being seriously crippled. What do we have? Verse 24 through 28 says, "And Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And he saw that he did not overcome him. He touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Yaakov's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he said, 'Let me go, for the day breaks.' But he said, 'I'm not letting you go until you have blessed me.' So he asked him, 'What is your name?' And he said, 'Yaakov.' And he said, 'Your name is no longer called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have striven with Elohim and with men, and have overcome.'" So, verse 28 gives us a look into the final transformation of Jacob to Israel. From walking in a false, supplanted idolatry to once again walking fully in and under the authority of Elohim. Okay, he goes from being Yaakov to being Israel. Now the prince is inaugurated. Yaakov will now be Israel. What was supplanted will now become the Prince of Elohim. Okay? But we don't really read it the way we're supposed to read it when we get an English translation. This should actually read, where we go, what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. And he said, your name is no longer to be called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have striven with Elohim and with men. Because as a prince, this is actually what the Hebrew says, as a prince, you have power with Elohim and with Adam. Not you have struggled against them, but as a prince, you now have the power with Elohim and with Adam. So this is another prophetic insight into the Prince of Ezekiel, who now as the Kohen Hagadol, as the high prince, will minister the authority of Yahweh Elohim to the people of the land. Okay? So when we look at these, we look at a transformation that is to take place, but doesn't necessarily take place. Why does it not necessarily take place immediately? Because as in all good things, tribulation has to come in order to clean out the grit to restore the fullness of the Spirit and the fullness of truth. Yaakov has supplanted something, and something will be supplanted for thousands of years to come. That has to be done away with. All right? All right. So we have the prophetic insight into Ezekiel. What is the sod application? Remember, sod, when we look at Pardes, you have Parshat, which is the topical, the Remez and Deresh, which are the more insightful little tidbits, prophetic little tidbits, things that link one thing to another. And then you have the sod, which people should really stay away from because people tend to spend more time in the metaphysical, Kabbalistic, Talmudic traditions of things, and they ignore everything else. But sod is also a vital part of things, because how do we apply this to our lives? In order to learn how to apply this to our lives, we have to be able to look into different aspects of Talmud or Kabbalah or whatever to understand what some of these things might possibly mean. Not that they do mean these things, but these give us insight into how to apply this to our lives. So again, we come back to the sod application, the struggle between Yaakov, Esau, and Israel. Okay, within all of us, there is a struggle between Yaakov, Esau, and Israel. There's a struggle between what we've supplanted, what our flesh wants, and the authority of Elohim that should be in our lives, but isn't always necessarily in our lives. Because in our world, the physical controls the physical. We're not always aware that it is the spiritual that actually has control over the physical. Okay, that's why prayer is an overweighted word. Prayer is a very overweighted word. Prayer is a very overrated word. When we sit down and have meaningful conversations with Elohim, because He is real to us, then the spiritual impacts the physical. Yes. Because I know, first of all, the word says, those who call on the name of Yahuwah will be delivered. In other words, those who call on the name of Yahuwah will receive the help they need. Okay? Alan, I need $100. Right there. You see what I'm saying? No, I'm just making that analogy. Okay?
Gotcha.
If I want something, I have to know that He is real,
Yes.
and then ask. Right? So it's more than just simply praying to some deity called God. It's having an intimate relationship with something that exists, that happens to have a name, Yahuwah. That means He exists in every aspect at every moment. Okay? And He is Elohim. This is another aspect of that conversation. Yahuwah, I need help. My Elohim this is what I need. Why do I ask him by name? And then I ask him as Elohim. Because now I'm saying, Yahuwah, I need you as Elohim, as the force that can bring manifestation to not allow the little fingers on my throttle body sensor to short out so that I have to pull over to the side of the road and wait for the car for a few minutes so I can restart it and move on, which I'll get that taken care of as soon as I leave here. I can go get the part at O'Reilly's. But anyway, if I believe, then what is Elohim? He's power, pure energy that can and will affect the energy in a sensor on a throttle body.
Can do anything.
Believe me. Okay? He can bring manifestation into your life. But what do? We're Yaakov. We depend on Esau. What can I do? I need to go do something to make this happen.
Right.
So I don't have the conversation that I need. Right? Okay? This is the sought application in this. Yaakov, again, was left alone. No word for alone. Yaakov, to supplant. Yathar also means to show preeminence or to be in excess. Can our Yaakov, our desire to supplant the authority of Elohim, be excessive to the point where we don't think of Elohim?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay? So in this verse, we firstly consider a state of being where our supplanted belief is excessive and shows preeminence over our relationship with Yahuwah Elohim. I can do all things through me who strengthens me. As opposed to understanding, I do all things through Mashiach who strengthens me. Because within the anointing of Yahuwah, anything is possible. All right?
Question.
Yes.
Sorry. So in your application there with your throttle body, see where this fits in. I have certain mechanical abilities, I have certain talents. We all have things that we gravitate towards and we're good at, right?
Right.
And I've always looked at that as a gift from Yahuwah. And so maybe I would, immediately go to O'Reilly's, get the part, and know that I can put it on. And even though I do that in the physical, and it's natural to do that, in my heart I still know that ability to understand is a gift from Yahuwah. How does that fit in your analogy?
Because no-
Well, I mean, that's a good analogy. Let's take a look at it from a different point of view.
Okay,
The throttle body sensor is $115.
I got you.
I have to either buy groceries for my family or spend $115 on a throttle body sensor.
Right.
So the prayer,
I'm with
the
you.
conversation, the belief is that I can drive 200 miles a day and not be affected. And so far, so good. Okay? And that's where that believes.
Gotcha.
I believe Elohim, and I'm trusting Elohim to spiritually, energetically
Yes.
grab that and not allow those little fingers to separate and cause a short. Okay? So it's the faith, belief. Sometimes belief without action is futile, but sometimes action can't be taken immediately, so belief has to overcome
That's
action.
a really good point.
Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Which brings us to, and there wrestled a man.
Yeah.
Okay? It should be exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
First, we consider that the word used here is ish.
Yeah.
Did a man come by and wrestle with Jacob? Okay? If we take into account the Talmudic Kabbalistic interpretation that the man is the guardian angel of Esau, okay, this is an interpretation given by the rabbis in the Talmud, and it's also a Kabbalistic tradition, that whatever he was wrestling with was the guardian angel of Esau. He was so concerned about what he was going to have to deal with Esau that Esau literally struggled with him spiritually. Okay? And affected what? If it was Ish that struggled with him, what is something that you worry about to excess? What is that capable of doing to you physically? Making you sick. Okay. Can it affect your ability to walk?
Yes.
Okay. So we take that from that deeper perspective. Okay. If we take that into account, we can formulate an idea, however, that what we have supplanted and our physical worship is based on our struggle against our carnal inclination. What I have supplanted, okay, I have supplanted because now Jacob is an excess. My dependence on what I have supplanted, my dependence on my physical being, which has supplanted my desire to communicate with Elohim, is now developing a spiritual manifestation within me of a carnal being. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So if we consider the other meaning of abach, to struggle, to wrestle, to also mean to become as vapor. Abach means to, literally it means to float away as vapor. We can consider that our spiritual dependence on Elohim fades away as our supplanted belief that we alone can control the outcomes in our physical lives. Okay, I guess there's a period there. So we consider our spiritual dependence on Elohim fades away as our supplanted belief that we alone can control the outcomes in our spiritual lives. Okay? This concept results in the crippling effect on our walk with Elohim, as stated in the verse 25. What does he do? Touches the socket of his hip. Okay? Anybody's hips ever hurt to a point where you can't walk? Yeah. Okay, walk on concrete all day for 11 hours, yeah. Everything from here down ceases to work. Everything from here up ceases to work because you're arguing with people all day, but that's okay. All right, so this concept results in the crippling effect on our walk with Elohim as stated in verse 25. So when the spiritual aspect of our existence, our relationship and our interaction with Yahuwah, our Elohim, is overshadowed by our supplanted physical carnal preeminence, our physical walk in life is compromised, regardless of how blessed we may perceive to be. We are compromised regardless of how blessed we may perceive to be. How many, I've used this example before, how many millionaires, these actors, do you read about that don't wake up in the morning worrying about how they're going to pay their electric bill or should they feed their family or buy a throttle body sensor? They don't wake up worrying about this stuff.
But they're in despair.
But they're in despair. They want to commit suicide because they're so miserable. They have everything.
They don't have to
Why?
rely on anybody.
Because Jacob, what has been supplanted, has taken preeminence over their relationship with Elohim.
That is really good.
Okay? All right. So overshadowed by our supplanted physical carnal preeminence, our physical walk in life is compromised, regardless of how blessed we may perceive to be. And we consider this in verse 26. It says, "Let me go, for the day is breaking forth." Okay? An inkling, poof, something has to change. But I have to think first that something has to change. I have to be aware in our spirit. Having had or presently having an inkling of spiritual desire to reach out and connect with Elohim, conviction starts to cry out to us to let go of the spirit of Esau and his carnally minded inclination. Okay? The word for let me go is shalach, meaning to put away, send away, let loose from, let my people go. Okay? Let me go. So we desire in our spirit to move towards the breaking of day, which again is Allah, to ascend. But we have to be awakened to rising above. We have to snap out of it. Yes?
So the breaking the day is breaking forth, are you saying that that's like, all of a sudden, he just went, there was like a revelation? He understood?
For him?
Yes.
For him, he's having a conversation.
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, all of a sudden he's
Yeah.
breaking through the connection and he actually understands what he's supposed to do.
Well, I don't think Jacob ever really quite grasped it.
Really?
And
Okay.
you'll see this in the next phrase.
Then what?
You'll see this in just
I
a
guess
second.
I'm not understanding that phrase.
Yeah.
Then.
What it's saying is for us, if we take it from a thought application,
Okay.
for us, if we take this word breaking forth, okay, we have to, something has to click on for
Right.
us.
It's a click.
Just like it should have clicked on for Jacob, but it didn't click on for Jacob. Because this is why Jacob goes back and forth between Jacob and Israel, because it never quite
Right.
got there. He never quite grasped it. Again, getting ahead of ourselves. Abram became Abraham. He never went back to Abram. Why? Because he believed.
Yeah.
And it was counted to him as righteousness.
Beautiful.
Jacob was never able to let go of, what do I have to do in order to do this?
Yeah.
Even to the
Probably had
point,
a little bit of Rebecca in him.
right? And even to the point of breaking the rules when Elohim told him, don't leave. He left. He went to Egypt.
Yeah.
Elohim allowed it. Elohim blessed him. But I'm going to bless your effort.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bless you so that you can do what you think you need to do. I'm going to stand back and watch. And for 400 and some change in years, he stood back and watched until they pulled out of it and started calling on his name again. So,
For him to choose, right?
Exactly.
The Elohim was always there to choose.
Well,
right.
Always there.
But,
he was blessing him because he was building a nation.
right. But let's see what Jacob has to say about this. Okay? Yaakov, our supplanted belief that we as physical beings have full control that holds on to the carnal mind, holding back the spiritual connection. Yaakov doesn't grasp what's happening to him at this point. And he does what? This is found in the phrase, I will not let you go unless you bless me. I'm not going to let go of the spirit of Esau. I'm not going to let go of my carnal perception. I'm not going to let go of my physical dependence until it blesses me.
There you go.
Because I can still do all things through me who strengthens me.
He wasn't
What you
willing
got
to
from me?
surrender.
He wasn't willing to surrender,
What
basically.
am I going to do?
The light was there, the inclination was there to let it go, but he had a grip on it. He had a grip on it.
Yeah.
I can still get this thing loose. I don't need to reach over there to get those pliers. I'm going to just try and, oops. Well, now I'm going to have to figure something out. Because now I'm going to need a punch and a hammer and all kinds of stuff to get it off of there.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Okay.
it.
So the carnal mind holds back the spiritual connection. And this is found in the phrase, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The supplanted carnally minded belief holds back the spiritual connection to Yahuwah Elohim and its potential for blessing, preferring instead to struggle in manifesting the blessing the carnal mind believes to be best suited.
There you go.
All about me.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we find ourselves in this state of being, and the Spirit is calling us to release Esau, we have to consider the question posed in verse 27 becomes just as important a question as where are you? What is your name? What is your name? Okay? Yaakov, you have supplanted your relationship with Yahuwah Elohim with a relationship with Esau. Is it Yaakov? Where is your name? Okay. Is your name Yaakov, where you have supplanted your relationship with Yahuwah Elohim with a relationship with Esau? Happens to all of us. Sometimes often, sometimes not so often, but it does happen to all of us. Yes.
Okay, I have a high school question. Supplanted. Can you give me the specific definition? I think I
To
know.
exchange one thing for another.
Exchange one thing for another.
In this case, to exchange your relationship with Elohim for a relationship with Esau or your carnally minded self. Okay?
Thank you.
So, is your name Yaakov, where you've supplanted your relationship with Yahuwah Elohim with a relationship with Esau? Yahuwah often refers to Jacob as my servant Jacob. Okay, we talked about that. The word for servant is ebed, that also means a slave. He's not saying my servant Esau. He's saying, look, the slave Esau. He doesn't want to have a relationship with me. Look, he's a slave to himself. Okay?
Yes.
So to be Yaakov-minded is to become a slave to the spirit of Esau, the carnal mind. Or, what is your name? Are you Israel, the Prince of Elohim? Do you recognize your part in a relationship with Yahuwah Elohim and release the spirit of Esau, replacing it with the authority of Elohim? This is the more involved one, because it involves our desire to stop, believe that Elohim is present, not simply to believe that he's real. This podium's real. I can't see Elohim. I can see the podium even though it's clear. But can I believe that he's present? Believe that I can have a conversation. Believe that Elohim speaks to me. Because once I do that, then it becomes real. It becomes just like this podium. Then I sit down and have a conversation, and I trust that what I hear back is what direction I need to go. Okay? Are we willing to do that, though? Okay? It's like stopping what you're doing so that you can go over and get the tool that you need to finish the job, instead of being lazy and trying to do it by hand.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Or anything like that.
All right.
did it the right way.
So, do you recognize your part in a relationship with Yahuwah Elohim and release the spirit of Esau, replacing it with the authority of Elohim? So, in the Tanakh, Jacob and Israel are both used to describe the children of Israel. I say it's interchangeable. It goes back and forth. Children of Israel go back and forth between a good relationship and something they've supplanted. Okay? Between idolatry and Elohim. And the house of Israel simply slips into idolatry and gives in totally. Judah goes back and forth. Okay? But they cease to be Bnei Israel. All right? So Abram became Abraham and was never again referred to Abram, like I said, because he believed. And because he believed, it was counted towards him as righteousness. So in the phrase, your name shall no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel, we have to consider that this was to be a permanent transition. Okay? In a sense, when Elohim tells Abraham, your name is Abraham, you shall no longer be known as Abram, that's a commandment. You will be Abraham. But since this is a choice, because it's not actually Elohim, this is a messenger, a malachim that he's wrestling with. It says the malachim is going to give you a name. The malachim names you Israel. You have the capability of becoming this. You'll be known as this, but you have to get past being Jacob before you can fully embrace this. And that's what happens all through the Tanakh, all through Brit Hadashah. Ezekiel should have been the book after Revelation. We shouldn't have Ezekiel in the front end of the thing.
Right.
It should be the book after Revelation, because it's the last thing in the game. Okay? So Jacob is going to struggle with this. We as Jacob are going to struggle with this. Or we can be Israel. But none of us will fully embrace being Israel, because Jacob will always be there to supplant something. And the spirit of Esau will always be something that we struggle with. That's a sought application in this. And Jacob struggled with it. You know, when you read the Kings and the Chronicles, you read about greed. You read about a thirst for power. You read about a desire to manipulate. Very rarely do you, and even when you read about these good kings that had a love for Yahuwah, that tore down the
Yeah. High places.
things,
Ashram.
they still went back to Esau. Okay? All right. So your name shall no longer be called Jacob but Israel. We have to consider that this was to be a permanent transition. It was disbelief, disobedience that caused the fluctuation between Jacob and Israel to take place and to continue in all of us today. Okay? We do lack in belief. We do lack in obedience. And our walk is hindered daily, weekly, maybe monthly, because we don't stop. This is one of the reasons that Shabbat was given. Somebody asked me about Shabbat the other day. How do we know what the seventh day Shabbat is? We don't. Because we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay? It was days that were appointed to us in a calendar system. Okay? So we're not quite sure where the seventh day is. But we have the commandment to stop what we're doing every seventh day. So we've decided Friday to Saturday is our seventh day, so we stop. And that's where we really take the time to connect. But why don't we connect the rest of the week? And Elohim knew that we wouldn't connect fully the rest of the week. That's why he gave the commandment of Shabbat. Stop. 1 day a week, stop. And spend some time with me. So, but do we stop and fully grasp disobedience and straying away on Shabbat? Do we stop and sit down and fully have a conversation with our Elohim on Shabbat? Do we do it the other 6 days? And this is what will mean the difference between Jacob and Israel in all of our lives. So the sod portion is a serious food for thought, as we do not only ponder the question, where are you? The first question in the Torah. But now we have to become aware and ask, what is your name? It's a perfect little thing for us to become. Now we can put that in our toolbox. And when I'm freaking out, wigging out, and stressing out, or I'm wanting to do something that maybe isn't a good idea, I stop and I say, what is my name in this particular situation? And hopefully that's enough to remind me, hey, go somewhere, have a conversation, write down what the Spirit tells you, and then go back and make the decision. Okay? All right.
That was amazing.
Short, sweet, concise, to the point, but that's Parsha Yishlach.
Very good.